Goals, dreams, moving forward. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. No one can tell about us better than ourselves. Watch the block of programs of TV BRICS International Network on Umtala TV, South Africa.
Sergei Viktorovich, Russia is chairing BRICS in 2024. The Kazan summit was a key event. Can you summarize the main results of the summit and Russia's chairmanship in general?
Firstly, the summit showed that BRICS is growing rapidly in credibility, and many countries want to join it. A significant number of countries has officially requested to become full members, while others have expressed interest in becoming partner countries. There are some new categories that the summit in Kazan agreed on. We increased the number from 5 to 10 just last year, so we decided to limit ourselves to creating categories for partner countries, forming this group so that new and old members of BRICS could work together and found synergies. The Russian chairmanship has done much in this regard. The work was friendly and there was mutual understanding in almost all major issues. There were always some nuances, but the declaration we adopted was based on what we called the balance of interests. No one was trying to pressure anyone, as happens at Western forums. Instead, they were looking for mutually appropriate and mutually acceptable formulations, and such formulations were found on all issues. The main idea of this declaration is the need to significantly increase the share of the Global South and the Global East in global governance mechanisms, including the Security Council of United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the World Trade Organization. With regard to the international monetary and financial system, there is consensus on two key conclusions. The first is to demand that developing countries, particularly the BRICS countries, as the fastest growing economies, should have a number of votes on the boards of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank that corresponds to their real weight in the global economy and their contribution to a gross domestic product. Now that the number of votes is significantly underestimated because the United States is adamantly refuses to relocate quotas and give up its votes. Right now, the United States has a package that gives it a veto power over decisions made by the International Currency Fund, which is not a good thing. The same situation is with the World Trade Organization, where the United States has been blocking the dispute settlement body for many years, at least 10 years in fact, and this is exactly what the World Trade Organization was created for, to deal with inevitable conflicts between market participants and mutual accusations of dumping, overpricing, and unreasonable tariff increases. All of that has to be dealt with by this very dispute settlement body. With the fund blocked, there is no quorum there, and the United States is not going to fix that situation. So the reform of existing institutions is certainly on the agenda, while at the same time, and this is the general view and one of the most important conclusions of the BRICS work, at this stage before the finish of the Russian chairmanship. Everybody wants to create alternative payment mechanisms, interbank settlements, mechanisms using national currencies, insurance mechanisms that will not be directed against the system established after the Second World War with the dollar as its backbone. And if we have an alternative system, given the fact that the dollar is increasingly being used as an aggressive weapon in the world's economy, and no one knows who will be the next victim. No one is immune to such power abuse from the dollar. Given such a desperate position of the United States in today's world as they feel their dominance is slipping away. Of course, it's not going to go away quickly, but it will take a long time. But they want to use everything, including the most forbidden techniques, to preserve their dominance. So protection against this, creation of a settlement system and payment platforms independent of such risks, make up a common task now, and this was on the agenda at the Kazan Summit, as well in meeting that took place throughout the year before finance ministers and heads of central banks, and they developed recommendations. They are not complete yet, but they are already allowing us to start building strong, sustainable and long-term systems. I'm sure that being the next chair, Brazil will continue this work. Well, certainly apart from the monetary and financial areas which are systemically important and serve the real economy, we ensured the support for industrial initiatives, including ours, to begin preparation for the establishment of the BRICS grain exchange, preparation of an investment platform and geological platform, an idea proposed by African countries. They are members of BRICS. Apart from that, 2 projects were put forward to set up working groups on transport and nuclear medicine. All of this was supported both at the BRICS meeting itself and in the declaration that we adopted, and when the BRICS Outreach Plus Summit took place on the next day after the Kazan event. All 35 participants, BRICS members and guest countries, supported this spirit and this vector of movement that had been formed in previous years, but which was accelerated under the Russian chairmanship, largely because we see a sharp increase in interest in BRICS. As I mentioned before, the BRICS is seen as sort of the vanguard of the movement towards a fairer world and a movement to defend against the dictates and tyrannies still widely used by the Western collective in international relations.
How would you evaluate the results of the implementing stronger interparliamentary cooperation among their participating countries as one of Russia's priorities during its chairmanship?
There have been several meetings between members of the BRICS legislatures and their supporters in the outreach format, and from countries that have not yet established ties with BRICS. For example, there was a session of the Interparliamentary Union in Geneva earlier this year. Russia is the part of that association. On the sidelines of this session, there was just an event between parliamentarians from BRICS and others interested in building relations with BRICS. The second issue in our interparliamentary program is to hold the first ever BRICS meeting of the heads of foreign affairs committees chairs of national parliaments. Again, this was the BRICS Plus meeting, and it will probably become a permanent feature of our association's work for years to come. The 10th BRICS Parliamentary Forum was held, and this structure has been in place for quite some time. Parliamentarians from the Commonwealth of Independent States Interparliamentary Assembly participated along with the head of the Tanzanian Parliament as president of the Interparliamentary Union. There was some criticism of that, but it was ignored. because the Interparliamentary Union, particularly their leaders, have to interact with all the legislative structures of the member states. So I see a very good future for parliamentary engagement, and we will support it in every way possible.
You have already mentioned the expansion of BRICS with new members such as Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. What positive changes have taken place in the association as a result of their joining?
The credibility has increased because the new BRICS, or the big BRICS, as our Chinese friends call it, already produce 35% of the world's gross domestic product, if you count on purchasing power parity. The president referred to this figure and stressed that it's already significantly higher than the group of 7 countries share the world gross product by several percentage points. In my opinion, 42% of the world's population is a serious figure. Over 30% of the landmass and around a quarter of the exports of goods on average. This is an impressive figure, and it's certainly only going to grow along with industrial production in BRICS countries, and those countries aspiring to join them. As for the countries that join, Egypt is the leader and the largest economy and the most influential country in North Africa, and the Arab League. It is Cairo where the headquarters of the Arab League is located, and it is in Ethiopia where the headquarters of the African Union is located. It is also the kind of partner that acts both autonomously and as a representative of the whole African Union. Certainly, the Islamic Republic of Iran is a potentially very strong state economically, especially given the fact that it has the 3rd largest oil reserves in the world. The Emirates is one of the leading logistics, trade and re-export centers of the modern world economy. Everyone is well aware of this. And Saudi Arabia is also a leader of the Muslim world and the country where the 2 holy places of Islam are located. Each of these countries has a well-deserved reputation and is respected in the world. Of course, they contribute to the credibility of BRICS as a whole.
One more fact. After the enlargement, the combined population of BRICS countries exceeded 3.2 billion people.
200 million.
In this regard, can we say that today the BRICS influences global processes not only in its 10 members, but also in the states of Asia, Africa and Latin America?
Well, it influences domestic processes in the sense that when people get information about the work of BRICS, the successes of BRICS, and the plans that BRICS put forward and what it achieves, they want to join this fair and mutually beneficial process. And during elections, people from the Global South and Global East predominantly vote for those politicians who support the same slogans and claim to want closer ties with BRICS in one way or another. I mentioned earlier that some countries want full membership. This issue will be discussed over the next year, but many just want to participate in certain BRICS events. There are more than 30 of them, and as I said, the criteria for forming the category of partners countries have already been agreed on. Some of the countries that have asked to join our union were invited by Russia after the Kazan summit. I will say that there are more than 10 countries enjoying consensus among the current BRICS members. We have an agreement that as soon as we get a response from an invited country, it will be announced that this country has joined the BRICS as a partner country. The assumption is that these countries will have the opportunity to participate in almost all BRICS activities. A separate format of meetings may remain where only full members will participate, but everything else, including summits like Outreach Plus and meetings of ministers of foreign affairs along with the ministers in charge, I mean the areas of energy, economy, trade, health, culture. Here we are interested in the partners' countries being involved in all this work. They will particularly participate in all the activities.
While we are at it, how is the interaction of cultural and humanitarian cooperation between BRICS and BRICS Plus countries developing now?
There have been a lot of events, and these events have generated very wide interest and resonated significantly. First of all, for the first time this summer, the BRICS Sport Games were held in June this year. But they were basically open to anyone who wanted to attend. The number of participants willing to attend exceeded 80. I think 27 sports disciplines were represented at these BRICS Games, and I'm sure we will continue our work to make them regular. Apart from that, regarding humanitarian affairs and party activities, they are also partly humanitarian. The first inter-party forum was held in June in Vladivostok, with about 40 participants from BRICS and partner countries. The inter-party movements that were there stand for the freedom of nations, and one of the primary goals is to make sure the ruling parties and other parties can join. The goal of eradicating remnants of colonialism has also been advanced. There are still many non-self-governing territories, and the most important thing is that colonial methods and neo-colonial methods have not disappeared from international trade. Western relations with Africa are characterized precisely by colonial methods, where raw materials are exported and all the value added and the profits from that value added go to the West. The forum was very interesting and well received. The innovations related to our chairmanship were also focused on local governance. There was the Forum of Cities, there was the Municipal Forum, and there was a very interesting discussion on how people live and how city councils chairs and village council members solve their problems. This is the relevant topic. So, I see many areas that will enrich our humanitarian and cultural cooperation. All BRICS countries are invited next year to the Intervision International Song Contest that we are organizing. With our television partners, we decided to revive a brand that existed in Soviet times, which stood for music competition for the members' countries of the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance. Now, it seems to me that the Intervision, available for everybody, will be an important cultural factor that sends a signal to humanity that it is better, it's not scattered to our individual corners, but to live together on the same planet.
In Life with a Song.
In Life with a Song, yes.
Information exchange plays an essential role in the development of partnership between the BRICS and the BRICS Plus countries. In this regard, how do you assess the recent opening of the BRICS Plus Information and Cultural Media Center in Moscow?
As positive, the Foreign Ministry was involved in that. Our official representative attending that event. By the way, there were some very big events in the media area this year. In September, we held a media summit timed to coincide with the TASS 120th anniversary. There were a lot of interesting activities. Participants enjoy this kind of interaction. We will definitely continue to use our facilities including that of the newly established BRICS Media and Cultural Center.
You have already mentioned Russia will hand over the BRICS chairmanship to Brazil. Apart from the payment system and this topic, what other discussions do you look forward to? What are your expectations for the performance of the BRICS in 2025?
I think that the payment platform, settlement mechanisms, and insurance mechanisms will be among the priorities for the Brazilian chairmanship. Because last year, at the BRICS Summit in Johannesburg, President Lula raised the issue of alternative payment system during the Russian chairmanship. Our finance ministers and central bank governors worked in response to this initiative enshrined in the Johannesburg Declaration. As I said, there has been progress, but we need to take it to the logical conclusion so that there are complete mechanisms to be utilized. And I have no doubt that our Brazilian counterparts will work with immense enthusiasm, given that this is an initiative of their president. But I think President Lula himself will make sure that this topic will be one of the most important. We look forward to continuing to work on Russian initiatives, and I'm sure we will. That includes the grain exchange, the investment platform, the transport group, and the nuclear medicine group. These things are purely of applicable nature that all BRICS members are interested in, and I have no doubts about that, so we will actually support the Brazil. The philosophical basis for BRICS activities will remain unchanged. I mean the general movement towards democratization of international relations, the movement to increase the role of developing countries and the world majority countries in global governance mechanisms. I mentioned the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the World Trade Organization. This work will certainly continue simultaneously with the creation of our system, independent of external risks. But that includes better, more equitable representation of the countries of the Global South and the Global East in the mechanisms of global governance. Of course, this also includes the reform of the United Nations. First of all, it is the Security Council, and here we have reaffirmed our position quite clearly. We exclusively support increased representation from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, because the West is unfairly overrepresented there. Among the 15 members of the Security Council, 6 of them represent the West, which does not correlate with any statistics regarding population in terms of industrial production and the size of the countries concerned. We specifically support India, and we specifically support Brazil, and we specifically support the collective initiative that the African Union has pushed for the Security Council reform. Yes, I probably would not have outlined all aspects of our work in Kazan if I had not touched on a few foreign policy aspects. They came out of the discussion and which are enshrined in the declaration. The particular focus was on the crisis in the Middle East, the catastrophe of the Palestinian people, and catastrophe that is now spilling over into neighboring countries such as Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. And there's a pretty strongly worded paragraph in the declaration about the urgent need to stop this bloodshed, and we did not turn our backs on it. On the contrary, during the preparation for the summit and the summit itself, we actively discussed, and the President himself mentioned this topic as well. And we had not turned our back on discussions about the Ukrainian crisis. We have agreed on the wording in the declaration which are considered to be fundamentally important, in addition to the general reaffirmation by countries of their well-known position expressed both at the General Assembly and in other forums. Within that wording, it was emphasized that the main thing now is to find solutions that will be based on the principles of the Charter of the United Nations in their entirety and as a whole. So far, regarding the Ukrainian crisis, numerous initiatives are heard, many of which are formulated in good faith. But none of these initiatives contains a phrase saying that the principles of the Charter of the United Nations should not be applied selectively, but in their entirety and as a whole. What that means is that the West prefers to talk about Ukraine only recalling the principle of territorial integrity, and formulates the stance in the way as if there are no other principles in the Charter. But in this Charter of United Nations there is also the principle of self-determination of peoples, and the General Assembly has declared the respect to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states whose governments respect the principle of self-determination of peoples, and therefore they represent the entire population living in the territory. And the racist regime that took over in Kiev after the coup 10 years ago, does it represent the southeast of Ukraine, Crimea, which immediately refused to recognize these putschists 10 years ago? But most importantly, even before the principles of territorial integrity and self-determination of peoples are mentioned, the Charter of United Nations requires all UN members to respect human rights regardless of race, sex, language, and religion. Being very vocal in every occasion about themselves as a champion of human rights, Western countries have never mentioned it in the context of the Ukrainian crisis. And the fact that Ukrainian authorities passed laws over the last 10 years prohibiting the use of the Russian language in any areas such as education, the media, culture, and everyday life. But doing that, they flagrantly violate the Charter of United Nations. But the supporters of the settlement based on the principle of the Charter of United Nations are blind to it and do not want to notice it. In the same manner, they did not notice the prohibition of the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Based on all of this, based on the fact that key principles of the Charter of United Nations are being violated by the Nazi regime in Kiev, and the fact that the West is praising it and saying, "Well done, you're standing for the European values," this is something that needs to be brought to light. And in this regard, the fact that for the first time the Kazan Summit Declaration enshrined an approach to the crisis in Ukraine that requires respect for the principles of the Charter of United Nations in their entirety and as a whole. I consider this to be one of our major political achievements at this event, especially given the fact that the respected, influential, fast-growing and politically active countries signed up for it. So, as you can see, I guess there's always something we can do better, but we are satisfied with the way our chairmanship is going and the way the summit meetings in Kazan and its culmination event was arranged.
Thank you for this conversation.